Moving on, South Africa is all set to host G20 foreign ministers meeting in Johannesburg. The two-day meeting, which started today, will mark the first time an African country is presiding over the international forum under the theme of solidarity, equality and sustainability. However, the summit is taking place without the United States of America. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will be skipping the two-day meet in Johannesburg after criticizing South Africa's policies as anti-American. U.S. President Donald Trump had earlier signed an executive order halting U.S. aid to South Africa over a land law that Trump says discriminates against some of the country's white minority. And Rubio's decision to skip the G20 meeting underscores a major worsening of ties between South Africa and the United States of America. However, South African Foreign Minister earlier said that the U.S. would be represented in one way or the other, stressing that Rubio's decision was not a complete boycott of South Africa's G20 by the U.S. Meanwhile, India's Foreign Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, top European diplomats, Russia's Foreign Minister and Chinese Foreign Minister will be attending the G20 summit in Johannesburg. It's also pertinent to note here that South Africa's G20 presidency is taking place when the world is facing a series of overlapping and mutually reinforcing crises, and also comes few days after the Ukraine peace talks in Saudi Arabia between US and Russia. And well, for more on this, our correspondent Calden Ogmo is joining us live from Johannesburg. Hi, Calden. Now, before we talk about the significance of the G20 foreign ministers meet in South Africa, I need some clarity on the fact if US is participating or not, because Rubio is clearly skipping the meet. But according to South Africa's foreign minister, US will be represented in some form or the other.
Yes, Rahisa, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation Ronald Lamola has confirmed that US as well as the other G20 countries will be participating, even though, as you rightly mentioned in your read, Marco Rubio, he will not be in attendance, but definitely the official in the lower level, maybe some official from the embassy here in Pretoria will be in attendance. And it's very important for them to be here, Rahisa. They are the next host for the G20 presidency, so they will be here, except that the high official level will not be attending this meeting.
Right, Khalid. Now, talking about the fact that South Africa is the first ever African country to hold G20 presidency. You're joining us live from Johannesburg, where the two-day meet has commenced. What's the latest that you can tell us, and also talk to us about the significance of the G20 meet in South Africa this year?
Well, Rahisa, as you rightly mentioned, South Africa is the only sovereign state in the African continent that is a full member of the G20. It is also the first time that G20 is being held on African soil. Pretoria has been very clear from the get-go that the G20 presidency, they will take it as a valuable opportunity to place the needs of Africa as well as Global South firmly on the international development agenda. Now, it's a two-day meeting, today and tomorrow. We've been told by the government officials that all the foreign ministers from all the countries will be attending, except, like I mentioned, the US will not be here. The lower levels officer from the embassy will be representing US. It is very important. Cyril Ramaphosa, who's the president of South Africa, today he will deliver his keynote address. There will be two sessions today. First is the keynote address by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Second will be the meeting of foreign ministers. As yesterday in the briefing, government representative from South Africa said that in the meeting, all the foreign ministers from the G20 countries will be meeting, discussing various issues that the world is facing, most importantly, the geopolitics. And then again tomorrow, which will be the day two and the final day of the foreign ministers meeting, South Africa will deliver its priorities for the G20.
Right, Calden. Also, let's talk about the theme of the G20 foreign ministers meet in Johannesburg, which is on solidarity, equality and sustainability. Something that the US said is the US has rather labeled South Africa's policies anti-American. Talk to us more on that.
South Africa has been rightfully, from the beginning get-go said this is our theme. As you mentioned, the three: sustainability, equality, as well as the solidarity. And they say they believe their foreign policy on multilateralism, which the U.S. opposes. In fact, the U.S. has gone on to say that South Africa's foreign policy is very anti-Americanism. Now, this theme, South Africa has said in very particular today in the G20 foreign ministers meeting, there are three priorities that they will be discussing. One is on the economic agenda. They said South Africa will definitely discuss the inclusive economic growth, inequality that global South is facing as compared to the other countries in the West. Very important. They're going to be discussing about food security, the impact of climate change on food security, and that is just an example of what African continent saw with the war of Russia-Ukraine, the impact it had on some of the African countries, as well as post-COVID, what happened to the African countries. So the discussion of food security is going to be very important. And also the third priority which South Africa mentioned will be focused in this meeting is the artificial intelligence and the innovation of sustainable development, saying that African continent is lagging behind as compared to the countries in the West as far as the technology is concerned. So these are the three main priorities that South Africa has time and again said that this will be one or some of the main important topics that will be discussed today and tomorrow.
Right, Calin, thanks very much for joining us on the show. We'll, of course, be tracking the G20 foreign ministers meeting in Johannesburg closely with you.